And then December comes and I find out best friend in the entire world, my husband, my relationship since I was 19 years old, cheated on me.
Only Manhattan season 2 just announced today.
Was it? Okay, I could talk about
You
it.
tell me. Biggest listing you've had.
46 million.
Holy biggest listing you've closed.
Probably 14.5 million.
Only Manhattan season 2 just announced today.
Was it? Okay, I could talk about it.
You tell me.
Yeah, I can.
Yeah.
It's fucking crazy.
How excited?
It is wild. Like Ryan literally, he texted us this morning. He's like, is everyone here? Like in a group chat. And I was like, I'm fucking here. Like there's some people who are sleeping, some people who like texted him. They're like, I'm here. And he FaceTimes us. And yeah, he announced it, which is wild.
That's so. Now is it the same like cast? Like how does that work?
I don't know, right? Yeah. I think that there's definitely like some favorites, right? Some people that like who do deals. Some people get fired. Some people leave the company. So I think we can assume that those people aren't going to be like on season 2. But then again, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there anyone that you want to see or don't want to see?
Well, that's a good question. I forget names, but I like the one gay guy.
Love him.
Yeah, what's his name?
Jordan Hurt.
Yes, Jordan was awesome.
I was doing I did a news thing with him.
Oh yeah,
recently. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Okay, so we love him.
As long as you two are on the show, I'm kind of good. I want to watch that. And we need some people. We need some people for drama, like the bystanders that are just gonna throw some spice into the show.
Yeah. Hot.
I like how Ryan almost like gamifies. I don't know much about real estate, and I want to ask you a ton of questions. Mm-hmm. But I like how he makes you guys like almost compete. It's like a weird dynamic where like, yeah, you're supposed to be working with these people and for the same company, but now you have to like go head to head and be like, I'm going to win this listing over you. Is that normal? Like, do people do that off camera?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Like there's been so many times where like somebody will go after a listing that is still live by another agent. Like the show doesn't even begin to capture like how cutthroat the industry is. I mean, like there's been listings that like the owner will reach out to me and then I'll see it's already listed by like another agent. And like sometimes that agent has been like a Sirhan agent. So it really is just like down to like what that individual is going to do. And obviously look, like I think at the end of the day, like we're all family.
Yeah.
But like business is business and like it's not personal.
Is that like stepping on your toes if another Sirhan agent goes and tries to list the same property you listed?
Yeah, I would say like it's not like you wouldn't actively like pitch it, right? Like if I have something like if something's listed by, Joe Schmo at Sirhan, like I would never like pitch it, right? But there have been times where sometimes like an owner wants like a different approach and maybe they'll see something that I'm doing, because I have a different marketing approach, right? Like everyone, I think that's one thing that's really cool and it's captured on the show is like everyone has a different approach to selling. Yeah. I would say like at Sirhan, we all have a different approach to like the standard other brokerage, but even us like as individual agents, we take a different approach. So it's just somebody who's like, okay, well, this person is pitching or, is marketing it this way. I kind of like how maybe Jade is doing this or how someone else is doing it. So that's the only time that I've seen a pivot within like a brokerage. But yeah, I've also had agents be like, hey, Jade, I have this. I think you're a better match for this. Yeah, I had a listing, at 9 Great Jones where, that was something that, an amazing agent, he's fantastic. Something went wrong. And he was like, Jade, I think you're a better match for this. And the owner of the building has been a client of mine for like 4 years now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we knew you.
How does that work? Do you guys then split the, like whatever you guys sell, or is it, you kind of take over the whole thing?
It kind of depends. I'm like not like a commission snob. Like I think like whatever somebody like you have a referral fee, right? Yeah. I've given out referrals to like resi agents for things that I didn't think I was a match for. And sometimes I'm like, hey, like rather than like a 20% referral, which is still a decent amount, like even a 20% off $1 million commission is decent, right? Sometimes I'm like, hey, just, keep it. I think it's more like for me, my approach is like more so about like the relationship building. Yeah. Like I'd rather be like, hey, like I got you. Like I think that good things will come back to me.
Mm-hmm. Right. And your whole thing is that you took the residential approach and turned it commercial. Why do you think nobody's thought about that?
I think that commercial in general, like, all right, real estate as a whole in the last like 5 years has changed a lot, right? Pre-COVID, people didn't really utilize videos and social media. Like even like I was doing some resi deals back in like 2019 and nobody did that except me and Ryan. So I think that taking that approach, I think Ryan does a really good job. I think a lot of other brokerages have done that as well. But now with commercial, it's like, it's really older people, typically like very corporate, you know, sort of like finance guys. And like, they're not necessarily the people who are on social media who are like going to get silly or going to get creative. Like it's very rigid and structured. And I think it's amazing. Right. But I think in this age, you know, you want to put a property in front of as many eyeballs as possible, and attention is everything. So how am I going to make a building stand out in a market of 1 million buildings?
I would assume the mindset is like, okay, knowing your audience, like the potential buyer of a commercial spot is probably not, like you said, on social. So they're probably like, okay, we're not even going to try. Where you're like, okay, they could be. You know, just because you're older doesn't mean you're not on Instagram. Everybody is on some sort of social platform at this point. And I think you're ignorant to believe like, okay, I don't even have to worry about that.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, look, like I think it's not just even just like finding the buyer, right? It's whenever you look at commercial, it's a strategy, right? So like we look at like a 5-year strategy or we look at a 10-year strategy, and the buyer for 868 Broadway, right? That's the building that we did the music video. We represented the buyer directly. So that was, you know, we got both sides of the commission for that. And even for that, it was more so like, I was like, hey, I know that we can lease this out, which we ended up leasing it, you know, so we got the commission for that. But like, based off of my experience, I know that we can lease it for this amount. And it's kind of like an overall strategy where we're like, okay, you know, we know how to market this way. We know how to get this price. This is our idea for this. And I think social media kind of helps us market things in a way to get certain prices that standard brokerages can't really do.
Understood. What is the craziest thing you've done for a listing?
Fronted a lot of money, I think.
It's pretty crazy.
Yeah. So
where would the money be going for something like that?
So I had a client who, this was actually for a tenant rep deal. So I was repping a tenant for a property, and the owner of the property was like a hard ass. Like they were super difficult, like, but in fairness, like I negotiated the shit out of it. Like that's really where I shine. Like marketing, yes, 100%, but like negotiation is like, it's like my bread and butter. I think it's like the feminine approach is a lot different than like the ego forward approach, right?
Right.
So I negotiated it, and I was like, shit. I was like, it was in December, and I was like, all right, so if we don't get this done before the holidays, we're missing the holidays, and then January, things are gonna be like rough. Like I was like, all right, we need to get this done now. So I fronted money for our LOI because we needed it signed like ASAP. Whoa. And I think it was only like $5,000, but still, I fronted it for my tenant, for my client.
With the assumption that it's gonna close.
Yeah.
And it could have not, and then you would have lost 5 bands.
I mean, I'm sure my client would have given me the money anyway.
Yeah, okay, understood.
But yeah, I think that was like the craziest thing as far as like, that was like my risk that I took.
That you took on for your own. Mm-hmm. What do I watch now? I watch that kid on TikTok. He does the speed tours. Have you ever seen these?
No.
Oh my God. This kid is like from Texas or something. And he's like a 23. He's got to be young. And he literally calls them speed tours. He goes, all right, speed tour. Starts at the front of the house and runs through the house. Like, will bang on the doors. He'll like explain like really quick. He'll do a tour in like 30 seconds. And like he'll tour the entire house. Mm-hmm. And he gets millions. I can't believe you haven't seen these. He gets millions of views on this stuff.
I like really don't consume. Oh my God, he's so cute.
You have to watch. These are hilarious.
I love him.
Yeah.
Wait, where is he based?
In Texas, right?
In Texas?
I feel like that's a Texas.
But he gets
town.
flown out everywhere. Like,
Oh, does he now?
That's what Joe was saying.
He's a lunatic, this kid.
He's licensed in PA and MD.
Oh, PA.
Texas license training right now.
So he's
Wait.
in.
Yeah.
Wait, Joe
I
said.
kind of love this.
Say
I'm
that again?
surprised
He's
Sirhan
in-
hasn't picked up on something like this.
I mean, maybe he has. Like, I think that's like it's brilliant marketing. I think that works definitely for like certain markets. I think again, it really depends. Like in New York too, like all of our properties are so different. So you really, if you want to sell something, you need to like come up with different ideas. But fucking crush it.
But that's the thing about real, like New York is big bucks. You know what I mean? Like that is kind of fun and cute for social media. If I'm selling a $10 million property, I don't know if I want my agent sprinting around this thing.
Yeah. Well, you know what's crazy during the show? It was so difficult to get owners to like let us. Like,
I was gonna ask that too.
properties.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was like so difficult because it's like in LA. It's kind of similar to Miami where like everyone is like flashy. They're like, you know, show off my like Ferrari, all that stuff. But you come to New York and like it's really like low key. Like owners don't want to be featured. Like they'll send their attorney if anything, and they don't want info on their property. So like that was like one of the big things that like was difficult while we filmed.
Now, did you have to get approval or like the
I did.
Sirhan? Oh, so you had to personally say, "Hey, I'm doing this for the show. Would you like to?"
Yeah.
And how many times did you get turned down?
A lot. I mean, it was just like deals that I was actually working on, like whether it was like, you know, they didn't use it in the show, but like I had a couple of other, like I had one other celebrity and then I had another like infamous person.
Who was it?
He's a client of mine still.
Can you tell me off
Oh,
camera?
come on. You said you would drop some tea.
Yeah, well, yeah. This is the tea.
This is the deal we had.
This is the we're using our token right now.
No, you're good if you don't want to.
You're not good.
So,
But you gotta do it.
Billy McFarland's a client of mine.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, we filmed some stuff with him and it wasn't used, but dealing with like other celebrities too. Shamik Moore is a good friend of mine too. I've wrapped him and all of his assistants on like a bunch of transactions
That's
too.
awesome.
He's like played Superman. He's working on like another thing now. So
Let me ask you though, because there was one, I forget who was selling it, but there was one apartment where like these super famous couple was looking for an apartment. They sent whoever, and then they ended up buying that apartment. But they were like looking out all the windows. So I was like, can't we just go and see
the
like,
apartment.
Yeah, go and like hang out outside to see who bought it because they're gonna be there eventually. Like, doesn't
You
that
would
out them a little bit?
You would literally think, but like in New York, like people buy things, but like they're never in it. Like, like it's wild. But yeah, you could if they still live there. I think it was like, I think all the tabloids said like it was royalty or something.
Yeah, it was like
they didn't say
he was like, oh, I can't tell you who it is. Like, not even like the agent. I don't know if it was just for the show, but then I was like, well, they're looking out all the windows, so they're just gonna be able to see where this person moved into, and then if anyone wants to go and see who it is.
Then again, I mean, like, who has the time? Like, you're in
That's
New York,
true.
like, who's gonna?
But I just
like is celebrity culture like that crazy? Like, just fucking take the subway, you'll see a celebrity.
Yeah, you'll be all right.
I love how you said but like you literally don't take the subway.
Like, yeah, you can totally. You'll find anybody on the subway.
You've never taken the subway in your life.
I love this. It's super cool down there in the subway.
Yeah.
That whole subway thing.
Yeah.
It's sick. Maybe I'll take one today just for like fun. I'll like go to the city, like wave, and then come back.
Yeah.
For you.
Ever bump into anybody famous walking the streets?
Oh my god, all the time.
She does all the time.
Yeah, it's New York. Like,
She's famous. People bump into her.
Oh, shit, my bad.
yeah, like I'm famous,
Yeah.
right? No, yeah, all the time. I mean, like Leonardo DiCaprio's like always around. Andy Cohen's like always around.
Andy Cohen,
Cuba Gooding Jr. I bumped into him like a good amount of times. Like,
In jail.
no, maybe he was.
Why was he in jail?
I mean,
Court, the picture of him arrested and going to court.
Oh yeah, no, I think that was like
Or
a
maybe
drug.
this
That
is
was a drug driving or some shit, bro.
pre-post.
That wasn't. He didn't go to jail
who
for that.
doesn't have a DUI nowadays?
Come on, man. That's
I mean, I don't drive, so not
so
me.
you, so you
but
can,
like,
right? You take the subway.
yeah, I take the subway or Uber. What did we say? Helicopter.
Exactly. Or the blade. Yeah.
Yeah.
What is the one episode where you had the paintings all over the Anna? What was the last name?
Anna Delvey.
What I didn't know who she was.
Seriously?
Yeah, I still don't.
You don't know who she is.
I'm asking you now.
Okay, so there's a show on Netflix called Owning Manhattan. It was like #1. And essentially she was somebody who came to New York. She was like a socialite type thing. And, you know, she got into some trouble. I don't know the full story, but I know that there was some, you know, conning type stuff. But I think that what's interesting is it was a documentary about her life, but it was like inspired by her life. So I know that she had some insight on it. I don't know how much of that story is really real, right? Like I don't know what exactly happened. I think that like she was also really young. She was like super young, given like so many like different opportunities. She wanted to open up a social club. And I think some things, some people wanted to give her money for it. And this was like before social clubs were really like a thing here in New York. Like now you have Zero Bond, you have, you know, major food groups, ZZs, all of these things. And yeah, she got into some trouble. She did some jail time or house arrest, but she was actually recently taken off house arrest.
Oh, good for her.
I know. Honestly, she's brilliant. Like she reads one book every single day. And
What?
Yeah.
How do you read a book a day?
I don't know. Ask her.
That is I can't read 10 pages a day.
It's
Yeah.
gotta be a picture book.
Yeah, there's no way. I mean,
So-
she must be like a speed reader, like one of those people like kind of like browses by.
Yeah. I think it's just interesting. I think like right now, like cancel culture is like such a thing. And I think like there's so much more, like people are dynamic, right? There's good and there's bad, there's yin, there's yang to every person, right? So I think like understanding that and being like, well, you know, something's happened, like, can you learn from it? Doesn't mean you have to do business with them, but if I can put her artwork to help sell a building, yeah, I'm going to do it.
Right. And it worked.
Yeah, it did.
Congrats.
So-
Yeah, your tactics are so creative and like unconventional. That's got to be a
I'm
fun part of
wild.
you are a little wild. That's got to be a
Yeah.
fun part of your job though, is like coming up with creative different ways to sell different properties.
I think I'm just like ruthless when it comes down to it. Like I've learned to like, I really don't care about like what another broker is going to say about selling tactics. Like they're not my demographic. Like I'm not trying to sell to them. Like
Right.
unless like you have like 5 million cash for something, like your opinion doesn't really matter when it comes to the tactics that I'm using to sell, unless you're my seller, right?
Has there ever been a tactic that you've seen somebody else use that you're like, that is ridiculous? Why would they ever do
Never.
that? You let it go. You're like, hey, kudos. Good luck.
Yeah, I think it's awesome. Like I think you have to try things. Like, look, I mean, the only thing that I don't agree with is whenever somebody like just does like the bare minimum, and that's more so because I feel bad for the seller. Like it's not even like on a personal level. It's more so like because I come from like the real estate background. Like my dad's old. My dad had me when he was like in his mid 50s.
Okay.
So he's like old. He's like in his 80s now, right? So I think like I always have the approach like your seller is hiring you to do a job and to like kind of do it well, like at least like put some effort into it.
I'm glad you mentioned your dad. I was going to ask about him. So I know he was a real estate tycoon back in the day. What does he think are the major differences between real estate now versus, you know, I want to say past, he's been in it for a while. So I guess past is a relative term.
I would say that like for him, he thinks like buying, like he's a risky investor. Like he bought like in the East Village, like back when it was like the slums, right? So I think like right now he'd probably say like things are overpriced, but he like has dementia now. So like he's not, I know he's so cute though. I know.
That's so
But he like I'll see him and like all he wants to talk about is like, I'm like, Dad, I'm on a show. Dad, like I sold a building. He's like, oh my God, that's amazing. But do you have a boyfriend? And I'm like,
No. Shut up.
I'm like, no. He's like, yeah, that's nice, but like I think you need a boyfriend. And I'm like,
Oh, he's hyper fixated on the boyfriend thing right now.
yeah. But he's super proud. And I think like as far as like what he would think, like I was like raised to like always just like negotiate. Things are like at like pre this COVID issue where like now buildings are transacting at sometimes like up to like 70% below their original market value, which is crazy.
Really?
Yeah, it's wild. Like it's fucking insane. It's like a giant Black Friday sale. So like for him, it's like he would think it's kind of awesome. Like, which is like a lot of investors who are like kind of like my age, where it's kind of like you learn from your family and now you're like entering into it. Like they're like savage, like young, hungry. They're like, they have the energy to like negotiate the shit out of something and just like attack it and get good prices. So like as long as you could withstand the storm, you're good.
So would you say now is a good time to buy?
Oh my God, it's like the best.
Where would you buy in this country?
New York City.
I can't ask this girl the question. She's gonna say yes. It's a good time to buy and buy in New York City.
No, I look. I'm very honest.
No, you seem like you're honest.
Like I'm very honest. Like, yeah, it'd be stupid. Like the last time that you were able to see like even like 40% below market value for buildings was back in the 70s, and every person who bought in the 70s is now like chilling.
Owning Manhattan.
Yeah.
How many people tried out to be casted? And well, how many people were selected first off? And then how many people tried out to be on the show?
So we went through like a couple of different casting processes. Whenever I started the company back in like 2021 was whenever I did my casting, and I was involved from like the beginning. I want to say it's always been like a rotating list of like 12. From the beginning, it was kind of like a certain 12, and then we went through a couple different processes, and the last round, and like the entire company, like I think the entire company, I don't know. I got the email. I think a lot of other people from the company got the email the first time around. And it's actually funny because in the last round, they had brought on another guy who did commercial. I was the first commercial agent at Sirhan. And fun fact, he actually tried to kiss me in a cab, and I was like, I'm married.
Whoa,
I know.
what?
I was like I was like, that's.
What did you do?
I pushed him. I was kind of like, it was like a lunch, and I was like, what? He was like very drunk, and it was very gross.
Was it a warranted kiss? Like you guys?
No.
Oh, okay. No.
Yeah, no, absolutely not at all. Like, no. But there was, I don't know if it was like no storyline with him or like, because commercial at like a residential firm is like crazy. Like it's such a wild concept, right? So whenever they announced that they were doing the sizzle, I initially like wasn't part of that cast, and that was kind of hard for me. But someone had told me, they were like, well, Jade, you know, if you do residential, you'll probably be included. And I was like, that's great, but like I have to kind of like stay true to myself, especially like when it comes down to it, like our show in general, my business, like reality is just something to leverage my business and to be entertaining. I love being on camera, right? But I'm not going to change who I am just to be on camera. Right. So I wasn't part of the sizzle, and that was pretty heartbreaking. But I was like, you know what? Just everything happens for a reason. A couple of other reality TV shows had reached out to me, and I still was loyal to Ryan because he believed in me. Like, you know, he let me come on to do commercial at like a residential firm, which is wild, like weird, like crazy. And I don't know if I told you this, but I use this like affirmation thing, and it's like your self-recorded affirmations. And I had said on like in my like little recording, I was like, you know, I am going to be on Ryan Serhant's show on Netflix. And we didn't even choose Netflix at the time, but I remember whenever I wasn't part of the sizzle, I was going to delete it, but I got lazy and I was like, oh, fuck it. I was like, I'm like, I don't have time to like go into my affirmations app, re-record, do all these things. So I was like, fuck it. Like, I'm just going to leave it. And December, I found out I was cheated on. That was probably like the worst moment of my life. Because I was dealing stuff with my dad and business and all that stuff. And then a couple months later in March was when I got the text from Ryan. And it was like, hey, come to dinner. Congrats. You're on the show. And I was like, what the fuck? I was like leaving a dance class and I was like, what? I was so confused. And then that was his announcement. He was like, you know, you're going to be on Netflix. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. So I'm like a huge believer in like affirmations and reprogramming the subconscious.
So you knew at that time it was going to be Netflix that
he told
because you didn't know when you were
us.
being casted, right?
Yeah, no, because
like,
we hadn't selected it. He was talking to a couple different people, and then I think they did the sizzle. And I don't know if the call came from like the production company, if it came from Ryan, or if it came from Netflix. But someone was like, oh, we want Jade, whether it was Ryan or Netflix or the production company. So
Wow.
That's awesome.
yeah, it was fucking crazy. But I'm like a huge believer in like the universe putting things, you know, in front of you, and you might not know why it's there, but just like trusting the process.
Yeah, trust whatever you believe in. Have you listened back to that recording of you saying it?
Yeah, because I don't know how to delete it. Like I just keep adding. It's an app called Think Up, and I just keep like adding different
Think Up?
affirmations. Think Up.
So you just like say like I'm going to be a multimillionaire one day, and you save it.
Yeah, like it's my affirmations are I am whatever it is now. So I make X amount now. I am the star of Ryan Serhant's show on Netflix now. Stuff like that.
Okay.
And I have like a lot of other affirmations that have come true as well. So
Do you say them into this app as if they're going to happen, or things that have already happened? Like when you say now, you're predicting the future almost?
correct.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
Do you feel almost awkward sometimes doing it? Like this feels weird to say
Never.
now when it's not really.
I was raised like very spiritual. Like I was raised like if you say something, you're telling the universe it's going to happen. And anything that I say, it's because I truly believe I was put on this earth to be that, to do that. And even if it's things where I'm like, oh my gosh, like, you know, that makes me uncomfortable, I kind of try to do like this, the work in my head to be like, well, why? Like, is it because I'm nervous to be seen? Or is it because I don't think that I'm worthy of that? And then I sort of try to like work through, okay, well, you know, I used to think spending, you know, $10,000 on a bag was wild, right? And it still is wild. But whenever you program your brain, and I know it's like so wild, right? But when you're like, oh, well, that's okay. Like, I'm just going to make $10,000 in a day. It'll be fine. And this $10,000 that I'm going to spend is going to help me make $50,000. Like, that's kind of like some of the things that I've like taught my brain, and it's maybe just an excuse for my shopping habit, but
But that's just that one example. There's other examples.
yeah.
that
Look,
sound
I'm not spending 10 grand, but I just wanted to kind of give
Yeah, for sure.
like the insight of like what I've learned to like whatever I put out, rather than feeling like guilty for something, like it just means that it's going to come back to me tenfold.
And you mentioned this like inner child therapy on the show. Do you tap into that a lot? Like if you walk into the room and said, you know, before you walk in the room, I'm nervous or I feel insecure. Are you talking to yourself saying, well, no, that's not real. You feel like this because this happened to you, but you can let go of that now. Like how often do you tap into that inner child?
I do it whenever I feel like anxious about something or sad or alone. I think going through like a separation was like really, really tough for me. And kind of being like, okay, well, can the 45-year-old Jade go back and, you know, give advice or like hug you, or, you know, what is like that trigger? I don't know like how much you know about that, but, you know, it's interesting when you're able to like heal that first initial trigger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting because as soon as you do it, it's almost like, oh, why did this ever exist in the first place? Like, why did I let this fester in my world, in my life for so many years when like that it's over and it's gone?
Yeah.
And it is as simple as just like, and I mentioned before, like the tattoo I
Yeah,
have
I
of
love
let
your
go.
tattoo.
Thank you. It's that simple. Like you struggle and you create such a problem out of nothing until finally you say, you know what, I'm going to surrender. And Christianity talks about it a lot, just surrendering your faith to a higher power and to Jesus Christ. It's that easy. Like it gives you direction. It eases a lot of the pressure you put onto yourself. And that's why when people like combat faith and religion, I just don't understand like why are you combating something that just makes your life so much better and easier. It never made sense to me. To be agnostic, I think makes sense if you're a question asker and you're always curious to know the true answer to something. But to be atheist and believe that nothing exists is just ridiculous. It makes no sense.
Yeah. Look, I think everyone has their like journeys, right? I think that people who I've noticed that most people who are successful have some sort of like spiritual guidance, right? Like,
yeah, for sure.
Like, it's always like in these rooms where like we're always like talking about like spiritual growth, you know, inner child therapy, astrology. Like it's so interesting to me because in other rooms it's like people think I'm like crazy, right? But then it's like once you're kind of in that environment where like you almost know that there are going to be subconscious blocks. And if you're somebody who has very high ambitions and you know that you want to do things that, you know, there's going to be blocks, right? Like there's triggers for everyone. There's blocks, there's insecurities. Like those things exist for every single person on this earth. But if you're able to combat it with different things other than therapy, right? Like traditional therapy is great. But, you know, astrology is like so on point. Inner child therapy, reprogramming your subconscious, EFT, tapping, all of these things, acupuncture, like it's helpful.
And again, like it's helpful for you, you know, like if I didn't, or I've never tried it, why would I ever poo what works for you? And I think I would assume, like you said, if you were in a room of, let's say, people that are just, I don't know, average, or they like to hate on that sort of stuff, they see you as having this sort of like delusional belief in yourself. But that delusional belief actually comes from a belief, ironically, into something else. Like you don't believe in yourself, you believe that you've been destined to do these certain things, and then that's reflective into now people thinking it's just a delusional belief in the self, and that's just not the case.
Yeah. Also, I think like I love that point that you just said, and like to almost like add to it, I think like the outside people kind of look at you, but they only get that like snapshot of that 5 minutes they're looking at what you're doing.
Yeah.
And they base it off of the assumptions that they have on you, right? And then they form an opinion. Whereas for you, you spend your eternity with you. Like, you know what is in your heart. You know the goals of, okay, well, you know, I'm going to put this glass here, you know, for this reason, this reason, this reason, this reason, for this goal. Like, only you know that. So
right.
I think, like, that's always the thing that I've had where I'm like, well, I love taking advice and I love hearing opinions, but when it comes down to it, I'm the only person who knows my strategy, my goal, and at the end of the day, you just have to trust yourself with a lot of things.
So you're now on TV. How have you let other people influence, I guess, the way you see yourself? Because like you said, you live with yourself forever. They see maybe an episode or two, and now they form their opinion on Jade. Did that get to you in the beginning?
I think like in the beginning, the first 2 weeks were like wild, right? Because like, on one hand, honestly, like to the public, I thought it was really awesome to see how many people like I touched as far as like, you know, the cheating story, like the friendship breakup. Also, like I had like even like letters to my apartment from women in the corporate world that were like, oh my God, I love that. Like you're bringing this like sexy approach and like you're like owning your femininity in a male dominated world. Right? I think that was really awesome. And it was very, it was gratifying for me to like touch people in that way. On the other side of things, I think like the opinions of more so like colleagues, like either people like were obsessed with me and they're like, oh my God, Jade, I love you.
Yeah.
Like, I think what you're doing is fucking awesome. And then I had people who are like, you're a disgrace. You are an embarrassment. You are somebody who like you're making a bad name for this and that. And that was something that was really hard for me because I was like, am I doing something wrong?
Yeah.
And then I realized I was like, you know, I'm going to piss people off. But whenever the show came out, there was just so much like adrenaline and like just the serotonin that like your brain is like, oh my God, like I'm on TV. I don't know if you guys saw, I was like the thumbnail and I was like, holy shit, that's fucking cool. I still like geek out. Like, I'm just like a normal like girl. Like I'm not anyone like special, you know, but I just thought it was really fucking awesome.
You're like, that's me.
I'm like, oh my God. And I'm like, I'm in a crop top. I'm like, Ryan's going to kill me. I was like, Ryan hated that outfit. I was like, Okay.
Hey, listen, it worked. You got it on the thumbnail.
I was like, is he seeing this?
He knows. He's fine. It's again, I talk about or see it all the time, like the outside perspective of the entire real estate space, men and women, and it's got to be hard to like keep up with the persona, because I think they almost like force it down your throats to be like, hey, you have to look a certain way, you have to dress a certain way, you have to act a certain way, and sometimes they're great, and I know it's very lucrative business, but it fluctuates a tremendous amount. So when months are great, it's easy to align with the upper echelon of what you presented to yourself. But when months aren't great, it's hard. And I know it because I know personally real estate agents that are like, I'm struggling. You know, have you felt that like combat of living and presenting yourself as one way, but maybe not feeling like that in certain times?
Yeah, I mean, totally. Like, I think on the show, like, I mean, the positive thing for me is like on the show, like I was kind of like at my low. So I'm like, wow, did I really like, did people let me out of the house looking like that? I was like, fuck. I was
That's
like,
dramatic.
I have no friends.
Yeah, right.
I was like, you guys all suck. Even my stylist was like, oh, Jade, you're wearing that? Like, ooh.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. So yeah, I think like being a real estate agent, like at the end of the day, like what you close is what you make, like, you know, so I'm sort of like learning how to like manage money now, like being kind of like on my own. And that's, yeah, something I'm like currently navigating, but I always think like, you know, if I spend money, it's going to come back to me, which is probably very optimistic. It's an excuse for my shopping addictions.
Well, listen, but that's the lifestyle you sort of chose. You know what I mean? You'd probably rather this thrill of ups and downs and maybe not knowing what's going to happen next month versus a 9 to 5 and having consistent income. They say that the brain has an inverse relationship between security and freedom. So on one end, people that are hyper focused on just having security, like a 9 to 5, a regular job, the risk of losing that job is less than, say, somebody like us. They don't value freedom as much. And the people that are in reverse value freedom so much that they'd rather risk the security to have that freedom. And so I would assume like you're just wired like that. You'd rather do something like this.
I mean, it was scary. Like, I
Oh,
think,
for sure.
like, I don't know how you felt whenever you kind of took that jump, but like for me, like I'd never supported myself financially. Like this is the first time that I've ever done any of this. Right. So like, I think that was like kind of hard because like on the show, I had to make that decision while like on camera, like
Damn.
to be like, oh, well, my husband cheated on me. What do I do now? And I'm like, wait a second. I was like, do I have to get an apartment? I was like, wait, fuck. I was like,
I have bills.
I have bills? Like, and I was like, I have to take out trash. And I was like, fuck. I was like, what the fuck am I doing? And I was like, oh my God, I actually have to like, close fucking deals. Like, I don't have a guy behind me, like who's going to support me now. So that was kind of hard. But taking that jump, like I think like when you take that jump, you have no choice but to win.
Yeah.
Like you have no choice, right?
Do you push harder now, you think?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sick when it comes to like my success and like just ruthless.
Yeah.
I don't know if you feel the same way.
Yeah, well, we were just talking about it off camera. Like when people operate, everybody wants to avoid fear nowadays. Yet fear is the biggest driving factor of success. Like if you're afraid to lose, you're way more. I guess the odds of you winning are that much greater than somebody that just likes to win a lot. You know what I mean? You have to be afraid to wake up the next day and not have what you have right now, or not have what you really want, and that'll drive you way more. So that's probably why you're doing so well.
Yeah.
And I feel the same way. It's like, what else is going to drive you? I think you need to instill fear within yourself, or else you're never gonna make it to where you want to be.
Yeah. What were you doing before you kind of like went into the content?
I had a tech startup out of college. So I'm not a developer at all. I found some software guys, and I had this idea for almost essentially like an academic marketplace. So people could list their assignments, and then other people can like bid on, I guess, buying that assignment and helping somebody out. So it was like a glorified cheating app. It worked out really well. Yeah, it was sick and it was cool. But what started to happen was the Johnny Drinks started to take off, and I was able to promote the app, and we were like top 100 on the App Store at one point, which was great. But my eye was off the ball. Like my eye was now on Johnny Drinks, and I kind of was letting this thing go to a point now where people were like blackmailing one another. I had this like ring of Iraqi scammers that were taking one email and they were blackmailing kids to be like, if you don't pay me $1,000, I'm gonna call and email your school and show that you've been whatever. Like, and I was like,
Iraqi scammers.
It was insane. Yeah, it was pretty nuts. And I was like, what am I doing? Like, I'm 22 years old. Like, I don't want this at all. I never intended for this to be malicious. I had kids like crying to me, like, please, John, like, I don't know what to do. I didn't know who this kid was. He's like, I'm gonna get expelled. Like, how can you help me? I was like, I don't fucking know, man. I don't know either. I'm your age. You know what I mean? So when that happened, I was like, you know what? This risk is not worth the reward. I'm out. And I hyper-focused on what we're doing now. This is way more fun. Jade, what should a first-year real estate agent expect?
Tears.
Okay.
I think tears, it's really, really hard. Like, real estate agent in the city, like, it's cutthroat. It's confusing. It is like you're going to make every single mistake, but yeah, it's fucking tough.
So say you're brand new. What's step 1, 2, and 3? Like, what's your, like, you show up in New York, you know nobody. What's step 1?
I think step 1 is like, if you want to get in the real estate industry, I think like working internal at like a real estate development company, or even though it's like a real estate assistant somewhere, that way you're getting like a salary, right? Like, I think that's like, or even like hourly, and you're learning, right? So you kind of don't have to take like a big risk whenever you first move here, but you're learning, because like when it comes down to it, like real estate is all about like what you know, and it's about who you know.
Yeah.
So you're gaining knowledge to be like, all right, so how does like transactions work, or how do owners want to be spoken to, or like, you know, how do I get on the subway to places? Like, you're kind of like gaining that knowledge. And then at the same time, you're kind of like building your network. Like, real estate at the end of the day is like a relationship too, right? So like, you need to learn, okay, you know, if you're going to deal with a cleaning company, right? Like, I worked in management for like so many years. Cleaning companies are great because, you know, you talk to the person who's renting it, or you talk to the owner, and then the person who's cleaning, like sometimes like they're overlooked a lot of the time. Like people overlook a lot of people, and it's not really cool, right? I don't agree with it, but like, I think if you're able to be nice, and you just never know what's going to come back to you. So I think like developing a lot of relationships, and sometimes, you know, never know, like the one, you know, doorman who you just were nice to, like, he can give you your first client. So
right,
I think that's sort of like my advice for like new agents.
How long do you think it takes to really start making money as a real estate agent?
As a real estate agent, I want to say, well, what's real money?
I don't want to. Okay.
Okay. No. All right. I would say like,
let's say like an average salary for a year.
Average salary. Yeah. I would say probably like three years.
Okay. That's a long time.
Yeah, I would say 3 years. Because like first year, you're getting your feelers right. You're kind of like, okay, am I doing this right? Second year is when a lot of those relationships start like to transpire, and you're like, oh wow, like that one person who I kept on following up with, they finally reached out to me. They want me to sell their property. And then realistically, like with New York and with transactions in general, you pitch a listing, you get a listing, you still have to sell it, right? So like that's a process. So there's that. And then by year 3, you've kind of closed a couple of transactions. You kind of have established like your process, or you are establishing your process. So that's kind of where I think people start making like money.
Okay.
But honestly, some people don't start making money until year 5. Like, and that's like why a lot of people quit. It's not made for like, people say like you work for yourself for freedom, exactly what you're saying, but like you also like have to hustle.
Yeah, and for the eventual of like, you think it's gonna pan out, may never. You know what I mean? Maybe it was gonna take you 6 years, and now you're at 5.5. You're like, I'm fucking done. I'm out of here.
Yeah.
Very interesting. I have some rapid fire questions for you.
Okay.
And then we'll wrap this thing up. First ever closed deal. When was it? How much money did you make?
It was a development site in Florida. It was a friend's ex-boyfriend. They broke up, and he was like, "You're so fucking awesome." I think I sold. Actually, hold on, that's a lie. That wasn't my first transaction. My first transaction was in 2014. It was a property that I ended up buying. Cold called the owner. I was like, I'll give you this. You have 60 days to respond to my offer. Cash like ready. And yeah, he accepted it. And I think the commission on that was like, it was 5% of probably like 30 grand.
But it's going right back to you because you were.
Yeah.
But so you're like, yay, money that I just fucking spent. But you saved yourself 30 grand.
I saved it. But like my first external deal was, I think it was like maybe like 550,000 that we sold it for. So let me do the math.
Yeah, we have calculators.
What's the return, or what's the percentage that you usually get?
5%.
On this, I think it was 6%. So 33K.
Interesting. Okay. That's essentially money saved because you bought the property.
Yeah.
Well-
Well, no, actually, no. This one, for that one, that was a land. So I sold my friend's land plot for just over $500,000.
Wow. Okay. That's a big payday for the first one.
Yeah.
How excited were you? What'd that feel like?
It was amazing. Yeah, it was great, but I kind of knew, like, it wasn't. I have like a high tolerance for like patting myself on the back. Like, I'm like, okay, this is what I'm expected to do.
Right. That's the whole thing about like the manifestation. Like you already feel like it's happened before.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Biggest listing you've had?
Biggest listing was 46 million.
Holy shit. Biggest listing you've closed?
I really haven't closed like a fuck you price. I think like probably 14.5 million.
Oh, that's not a fuck you price?
No.
Oh, okay. Sorry. That's, and most amount of money you've made on a sale?
Most amount of money. I don't want to say.
That's okay. Can you tell me off camera?
It's honestly not that much.
Really?
Cause like okay, like the numbers sometimes you're like, oh my God, look at this price. Like even like on Netflix, like they're like, oh my God, she made $444,000. And I was like, the math's off on that.
Oh, really? That's funny.
Well, cause like standard, right? You have to think like 6%. But realistically, like sometimes you negotiate stuff, whatever, and at the end of the day, like you have other people that work a listing with you, right? So you have to split it with your team members. For me, I'm always very generous with the people that I work with. Like I think my team is the reason that I'm successful. Mm-hmm. Like I am not like, you know.
He just pointed at me and goes, "Yeah." I said, "No, bro. I give you kudos. I pat you on the back."
but seriously, like,
yeah, no, I agree.
Like I don't surround myself with people who are dumber than me. Like I only surround myself with people who are smarter than me, who are more talented, and I believe in them so much, right? So you have to think that, and then you have to think Sirhan takes a cut.
Right. Okay.
Right. So Sirhan takes a cut. You know, I have to pay out like, you know, my peeps. I also spent a lot of money on my marketing. Yeah. So there's that, and then there's taxes. So by the end of the day, like I'm like, okay, well, my bills are paid, kind of, and I can buy myself like a bracelet, and we're good. You know?
Yeah, it goes back to again like that whole facade of like the real estate agent wants to look super super rich, and there's a price to that. And if you're just closing these deals and they're not accounting for these other expenses and costs, you may not be making as much money as you accounted for, you know, which is very interesting from the outside looking in. But,
oh my God, yeah, it's crazy. Like I'm like a super like high low girl. Like don't get me wrong, like you won't catch me in Zara, but like
I was gonna bring up Zara because this shirt is Zara,
which it looks great on you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I saw the clip and I was like, she's slandering Zara, and I will not stand for it because that's where I shop, and I love Zara.
I get it. It was like more. It's funny because like it's less of. I'm like a high low girl, right? Like I'll go to a sample. Okay, so in New York City we have sample sales, which is essentially like Theory or you know whatever brand, and they're like, okay, well I'm gonna sell this at Zara pricing, right? So I think that's my thing is like
you're a smart shopper.
Yeah, like I'm a smart shopper when it comes to like real estate, but also like clothing because I feel like they're both like, you know, kind of similar, right? Like
I agree.
Yeah. So, and it was more about like just people being basic.
I understood the point.
Yeah.
I was still offended by it, but I understood the point. Zara, H&M, those are, I would say
Yeah,
those are my top
but then
two.
again, like I fucking love AliExpress. Like
This girl's talking shit about Zara. Shops on AliExpress. That's crazy.
I love Ali. Like I'll do like some like random teas on AliExpress, and then I'll buy like whatever at a little Cult Gaia or Retro Fat, like high low. I
That's
balance
what you meant by
it.
high low. Okay, I understand.
Yeah, like cheap and
and not cheap. What is the craziest, aside from the front of the cash, what is the craziest thing you've done to win a seller over?
Ooh, that's a good question. Go on a date? No, I'm joking.
You just got it. Well, that's like the show Selling Sunset. I'm like, all these girls just like flirt with these dudes to buy houses. It's crazy.
I think just like following up. Like I'm like a crazy following up person. I've gotten someone a gift from Hermes with as like a gift to congratulate them for something. But I did really, 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 really want their business, and I ended up getting their business. But it was just like consistent follow up. It was consistent like, hey, I think this is great for you. Hey, this is this opportunity. Hey, like, do you have a temple already? Like, hey, like just always keeping them top of mind and always making sure like I'm thinking about them and I'm staying top of mind for them. So that was kind of my strategy there. And yeah.
That's an interesting one. Okay. So Hermes is not that, I mean, that's great. But that was after you closed. So you already knew you made money.
No.
Oh, you were like, hey, congratulations. I know you're going to do it.
Yeah. I was like,
That's
congratulations.
crazy. That's crazy. You gave him the daggers like, here you go. 'Cause I know you're
Yeah.
gonna
Well, I
close
was
this,
like, oh my God,
motherfucker.
congratulations. Like I congratulated them for something and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing. I left something at your apartment and yeah, it was a gift.
That's amazing. How,
I told you I have a shopping addiction.
yeah, you just like to shop. How frequent are your follow-ups? So like, let's say this apartment, and you don't sell residential, let's hypothetically say you do. You're trying to sell me this apartment, right? You toured me. I was interested today. You perceivably won me over. Are you following up the next? Like, give me your entire process.
Yeah. Well, it depends. I like to be like very intuitive and intentional, right?
Okay.
So I want to know like, what's your life like? Like, I'm not going to follow up with you if you're out partying in Vegas or in Montauk. Like I'm going to be a little bit smart with, okay, like I'm going to respect your schedule. And I'm just going to ask you some questions. I'm also going to send you some updates so that subconsciously you kind of know like, hey, is this something that's going to be on the market for, 5 days, or is it going to be on the market for ages? So from the point of you saying, hey, I want this apartment, next day I'm following up.
Right. Okay.
After that, if you don't respond, probably 2 days later, I'm like, hey, like, what's up? And then I would say like 1 week, I'm like, oh, like, because obviously I'm thinking about you, right? So I'm like, oh my gosh, this reminded me of you.
Like a
And
cat
then,
meme? Like, what are you sending him?
Like, I don't know, like, let's say I met them through a friend and I'm with that friend, or, we were at a cocktail bar. I'll be like, oh my gosh, like just tried this whiskey drink, like thought of you or whatever. Like, I don't know. For you, I'd be like, oh my gosh, best espresso martini ever.
You won. I'm buying whatever you're selling.
But it's about knowing you, right?
Right.
And then like, depending on how often like you're communicating with me, I'll kind of go to like, okay, once a month. Like if you're like, I'm not talking to this girl, I'm like, okay, maybe you're in like Dubai or something. Like, I don't know. So I'll keep following up.
Do you have like a structure to your follow-up, or it's kind of like a field play? Like, all right, maybe once a week, maybe every other day. Or whatever?
It's more strategic. So I keep every single person that I do business with onto a CRM.
You do, okay.
Yeah. And once a week, every single Sunday, I go through it with my director of ops, and we go through and, either I'll follow up with you or I'll set a follow-up reminder, but it'll just be tailored based off of what's going on in that person's life, right? Like if you're like, hey, Jade, I really love this apartment, but I'm traveling and I'm not really in a rush. Like I'm thinking, what position are you in? And like, how can I use my knowledge to help you, right? Like that's my job. So if interest rates are going to be going down, I'm going to let you know. Like I'm not going to just follow up, like to be like, oh, following up. That's fucking annoying. Like I'm going to follow up with information that's helpful for you.
Yeah. And I would assume you want to also keep it like focus. Because again, if you send me a picture of an espresso martini, I can answer, oh my God, it looks great. And then the conversation never really goes back to the intention behind it. Like, oh, hey, by the way,
it's like, that's more of like like if you're not responding to me,
like, hey, motherfucker, I'm right here.
I'm like, hey, like, hey. But then like, you know, I try to mix between like personal of like, hey, like I like know you well enough, but also like, here's some like valid information that'll help you make a decision that is in your best interest. Like if the market fucking sucks and if, you know, you're getting a mortgage and I think interest rates are going to increase, like that's a conversation to be like, hey, look at this article. Like, let's discuss now because let's like save you money here.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. I love the little like examples, hypotheticals of what a real estate agent goes through.
It's wild.
I'm sure it is. And I can't imagine the ups and downs of your day to day. Last question we ask every guest. Throughout your entire life, what has been the lowest of your lows? And let's follow that up with what has been the highest of your highs.
Lowest of my low was 2022. 2022, early February, I was on a trip for my like wedding celebration. I was actually with another cast member. I was with Chloe at the time and got a call. Hey, at the time I was dealing with stuff with my dad. They're like, hey, you know, your father is probably not going to make it. You need to get to Florida. And I was like, tough. 4 months later, he was fine, right? 4 months later, Jade, you are not part of the sizzle reel. And I was like, oh my fucking God. Sorry.
It's okay.
I was like, okay, another whammy. And I was like, it's okay, universe, we're good. I was like, show me a sign, we're good. And then I did Fashion Week. So it was like a year ago. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to spoil myself. I'm going to do Fashion Week. I'm going to focus. And then December comes and I find out my best friend in the entire world, my husband, my relationship since I was 19 years old, cheated on me and was lying to me.
Wait. With your best friend?
Oh, sorry, not with my best friend.
Oh, like, come on. I was like, that's crazy.
No.
She let you know.
No, I got a DM.
Got it.
I got a DM. And then he came. He was my best friend. Sorry.
Okay. All right. Got it.
Sorry.
You got me scared. I mean, still bad, but yeah.
My husband at the time was my best friend. And
Understood.
That was all within the same year, which is crazy to me because I'd never, you know, supported myself. I'd never like really kind of like built the foundation of like my relationship with myself. So I'm like, fuck, I've had a tough year already. I've kind of relied on this person as like my rock, you know? And now like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
So that was probably my low. Cause I was like, why? Like, what the fuck?
Right.
And then, looking back, I kind of see why it had to happen. And then my high was the morning of the show. I think like after like that entire year of like just I don't even recognize myself from like when we were filming, like because that year was so difficult. I was like sleeping on the couch. I wasn't eating. I was so depressed, and to like. At the same time, like I like took a risk. I like did stuff like every single person doubted me. No one thought that like I would be able to do commercial one in general. Like, you know, I wear mini skirts and crop tops. Like people are like, well, you need to cover up. And I'm like, well, why? If it makes me feel good, like what does it have to do with my negotiation tactics, with how I market a property? Like what does it have to do with anything? So I think being able to transact on Netflix, being like the first commercial agent ever on reality TV was like kind of like a fuck you to everyone, but also like to have inspired a lot of women and, you know, to kind of showcase like how I got there and the struggle. So that was a big moment for me.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Jade, this has been fun. This is a really good time. I appreciate you coming on. Where can they find you, by the way?
You guys can find me on Instagram, Jade Shenker. I answer all of my DMs. You would know, or most of them.
She does, and very quickly.
Just like not the marriage proposals, those.
Don't send those. Yeah, she didn't answer for some reason. I don't know why. But anyway.
And yeah, just email jade@sirhan.com for all business stuff. But this is really fun.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Season 2 coming soon.
I know, season 2.
forward to
That
it.
we'll talk off camera.
Awesome.
It's
We
gonna be
can't say
juicy.
much. That's it for today, guys. Like, subscribe, share, all the good stuff. Cheers.